All right, so here is the tractor. And a friend of mine had passed away, and I was speaking to his wife, and they decided the family wanted to find a new home for it. And so another friend of mine was looking for a tractor, and it actually worked out perfect that he was interested. So they made a deal, and we're going to get this thing out of here. So the plan, we'll get it started, and then there is a bush hog right there that we're going to get that goes along with it. So we're going to take it down to the cave after we're done getting it running and getting it out of here, and there's a bunch of miscellaneous things we're going to do to fix it up. So let's go ahead and get it started. Okay, all right. Fire it up, man. Quit dragging. The old John Deere got here safe and sound. It wasn't too far away. A friend of mine who passed away was literally just up the block. Kind of a sad situation with losing him, but the tractor's going to a great family, to a great friend of mine who's going to take good care of it and use it on his property. Our plan is to dive into a couple leaks it's got and try and fix a few things so it's as good as it can be for him out at his new place. So check it out. So this is a 1967 John Deere 2020. And it is a gasoline tractor. Very, very nice tractor. It has a
what is this thing? A 47 loader. Not sure exactly. Maybe it's I think the serial number or the model number might be a 147. So that's a E0047. So this thing belonged to a good friend of mine who passed away, and another friend was looking for a tractor for his property to basically just do miscellaneous things around the property. It is a very strong running tractor. It has a gas engine, and it starts right up, but it has a few issues. It's leaking oil down here. Not sure if it's hydraulic or engine oil. There's some kind of a leak here in the middle, and then there's a leak in that area, and then there's the leak at the back. And I'm not sure if some of this is just dripping and running from other places, but I told him that I would kind of go through it and try and find some of the issues that are causing it to drip its oils out. So there's a big wallop in the hood there. Beautiful thing about this machine, it came with two attachments. We have this awesome Kiwani blade for grading or, working a driveway or leveling something out. That works absolutely awesome. There's also a brush cutter that works with the PTO here that we haven't tried, and I honestly haven't even tried the PTO to see if it spins. Probably should have before now, but what I think I'd like to do is get the hoods off in this area, and then take it outside and pressure wash it and get all the dirt and grime off. I think I want to take this blade off and get it out of the way so that when I'm working in this area, I'm not climbing over all of this. So let's just do a quick little walk around of this thing, take a look at it. Has this really beefy custom brush guard. Man, that thing is a tank. It's not just a box section of square tubing. There's like two inner braces here and a centerpiece. So plus this mesh on the front, that's like 1/4 inch thick steel. This bar, that's a 1/2 inch by maybe 2 inch. Goes back to the loader arm there, or the loader support frame. And they made it removable too. So they took and they bolted it. I bet he made that. Oh wow, look at that. Big square, big chunk of heavy angle iron there that they braced it with some 1/2 inch corner pieces. And then it mounts straight to the front. Interesting. And then here it looks like, yep. So we can adjust the width of the wheels. So if this tractor did go out and work in the fields, you can adjust where the front wheels are in regards to trying to hit the rows of your crops. We're not going to mess with that. We're going to leave it alone because obviously he does not plan to use this in a field. Looks like got a few hydraulic lines that are not the greatest. That one up there looks like it's leaking. Little 4-cylinder. I don't know what engine this is, but we can look that up. It's got wheel weights. That's really nice. So it's got 1, 2, 3 wheel weights. I would assume it's identical on the other side. So one advantage of having heavy wheel weights is that increases the weight capacity that this bucket can lift. It does make the machine overall heavier, but it's a counterweight. It keeps the back end down when you're lifting something heavy. So there's a filter on there. It says 9 of 22. It is a Fram, but whatever. Let's jump up here. All right, there's your old school dash. Looks like it says 5,456.9 hours. We got fuel gauge, water temp. That's probably a alternator light, and that's probably an oil light. I don't see an oil gauge anywhere. Is that a 12 volt? I think that's a 12 volt adapter port. There's your choke. This is throttle. which is also linked to this pedal. Start, and I would bet these are lights. So when I turn that, yeah, there we go. All right, here's our gear shift pattern. We've got park, first, second, reverse. So basically that's going to be a high and a low. Park, high, low, reverse. And then we've got 4 speeds per high and 4 speeds for low. So we've got 1 to 4 and then 5 to 8. So you got 1, 2, 3 down, 4 up. And then same with 5, 6, 7, 8. This is going to be a clutch. Feels good. And then the brakes are independent. So there's a little attachment. It pinned in here, and it folds up and down, and it can basically lock these two pedals together. This will brake this side, and this will brake the other side. Or if it's pinned together, or you put your foot in the middle, you can just brake both at the same time. To me, it doesn't really matter if that little attachment's there, and clearly the previous owner had the same thought. But looks like a good little machine. What do we have down here? That's probably a diff lock for locking the rear differential. So basically locking the two wheels together so they spin at the same time. And then there is our PTO on and off. So it says on right here and off right there. So to engage the PTO, when it's running, you would just flip this that way. I'm going to leave that off. And on this side, so these are for the bucket, and this is for the rear 3-point blade, or basically the 3-point to lift and raise the 3-point bars, the arms there. Under here, what do we have? It's our battery. Tires look good, especially the rears. Not dry rotted or cracked. Let's find the date code. That's surprising, because if that date code is right, C178, is that a 1978? They changed how they basically numbered tires, I think in the 90s, maybe 2000s. But normally when you have a 4-digit date code, the last 2 numbers are the year of the tire. I could be wrong, but I mean 1978, this tractor is a 1967. It's very possible. We do have matching set of wheel weights. This tire looks pretty dang close to being the same. Let's see if we can find that number here, probably on the inside. This one says C328. So that definitely confirms that number is not the date code, because 28, we're not even to 2028 yet. So I don't know how to determine the year on a tire that old, but if you do, definitely leave a comment. I'm curious. Looks like for lights, we've got 2 front lights here, a rear light, and a flasher over there for traveling on the road. The front tires are a little bit worse. They have a date code on them. That one just says 304. See, they've got some cracking in the sidewalls and tread. They're tubed, so it's much less of an issue. And as little as it gets used, it'll be fine. The tractor did come with 1 brand new tire. And so we actually already took that out to his place and sit in his barn. But yeah, it's a good tractor. These people prefer the diesels, and that's fine. So do I, honestly. But for what he's going to need out of his property, this is an awesome machine. I am absolutely happy he was able to get it, and I'm happy that it came from a friend to a friend. And that's awesome to me. I love seeing, machines go to people that are going to actually enjoy them and use them. And so let's start digging into this thing. Awesome little tractor. Thing starts right up, so we're not doing a will it start here. So let's start ripping the hood off, get these side covers off. Maybe I'll get Froggy and I'll take off this grill guard. I don't know yet. So let's just get a few tools and jump right into it. Alright, I'm trying to get these little metal grates off. Things are always a bit tricky because they're spring loaded. All right, now we can see the engine way better. So there's our little 4-cylinder gas. Got our distributor, coil. Looks like it's a fuel pump over there. Got the alternator. This is our radiator. And I don't see any coolant in the holding tank portion. I can hear it in there though. And then we have the air cleaner is right there. And there's a leak of some kind, and it's dripping from higher and kind of pooling down here. Saw, what is that little green arm thing? Is that I'm not sure what that is. Is that for the hood? Okay, so there's a bolt right there, a stud. I'll bet the hood folds up on that. And that's why it wouldn't come off, because it was jammed. Alright, we'll mess with that later. Almost looks like whatever this situation here is leaking. Maybe that can't be engine oil. Okay, so there's an oil cooler. That's an oil cooler. You can tell because the fins are thinner and there's a separation between this side and the radiator fins right there. And it has to be because this tank has a line that goes into this radiator essentially, and you cannot have the water, the coolant, mixing with the oil. This is fuel. This is not hydraulic oil. There's our sender, our sending unit. Man, I wish things had sending units in such easy to get to places like that. That is awesome. So here's the other side of the air filter. So what is this thing? Oh, man. You ever seen what oil can do to rubber? This should fit that. So this basically is like a little air inlet, and it is like 1.5 inches too big now because it's so impregnated and soaked in oil that's been leaking on it for so long. That's crazy. I doubt we're going to get that to come around. Let's check the dipstick. So we are over full. Yeah, so maybe it has to be checked when it's running. We're right there. And the working area is about 1.5 inches lower down in that region. I'll have to look it up and see if you have to check this while it's running. I don't think you do. I know I haven't added any oil to this thing. And it does start up and run fine. What else would be in the oil? And we're leaking oil. And fuel, possibly. That's our starter right here. That's the fuel pump, filter. There's how you add oil to the engine. Right here. Where's the hydraulic oil? Okay, I'm going to share hydraulic oil with the transmission. Which kind of would make sense because all this is plumbed. Oh, these are all attachments. Where do they get their oil from? Right there, that line goes in. I think it gets all of its oil for the transmission and the hydraulics from the same place, which is okay.
So one of the leaks we have back here is somewhere in this region in regards to the hydraulic lines here. And it's not the line, it's something to do with this block here, and it's dripping down. And actually, you can already see a brand new drip right there. So, I don't know if you've seen these. These are pig mats that absorb oil, but this style has a plastic poly backing. And what that is nice for is you put it underneath something, it drips, but then when you move it, there's nothing left on the concrete. So, we're gonna stick it right here, get a couple across there, and there's some sort of an oil leak at the front of the engine, and I can see a couple drips right now. We'll get a couple right there. Yep, see those drips? So the whole bottom here is quite a bit of oil covering that, and we'll show you, we'll get into that more later. But let's go ahead and stick a couple of these in here, and that should, and actually, what's that? Yeah, we got a little bit of a leak here too, so let's get another one.
So I literally pulled this thing in here, have pretty much done nothing to it. And I'm trying to start it, just crank. Nothing. So, trying to figure out what's going on here. This is an updraft carburetor. I put a better battery in it. I've got it on charge now. I've got a jumper pack on it. I'll show you. We've got neutral. Brakes aren't engaged. There's no neutral safety or anything. A little more choke. See, it'll do that. Let's a little less choke, maybe. All right. Well, we're getting oil pressure. That's good. Only thing I did do is I found this little wire here was just floating, and this is, I'm guessing, the oil pressure switch, because when I see, right here's an oil light. When I take and I put this wire back on, sliding it on like that, we get the light. So that is a low oil pressure light, which does go off when we crank. So that's literally all I've done with it. So I feel like we're not getting fuel. So let's go look at the carburetor. So here's our carburetor. Looks like it's a marble. So this is the throttle. I feel like it just have some kind of return spring. I don't know why this won't return. That looks like a shutoff solenoid. Oh, there's no wire hook to it. Looks like there was one. So maybe that is a shutoff solenoid for fuel. Let me dig around. See if I can find any wires that aren't going anywhere. Oh, there's one. I don't know if I'm able to show it to you. You see the wire is right there. And somehow I think that wire got pulled off the connector for the shutoff solenoid. And so I'm going to grab some needle nose and see if we can pull that out and see if that fixes our no fuel issue. Okay. Well, there's definitely enough length. Huh. All right, so we'll take that wire. I kind of fit it back there. Looks like it just should go on. Just like that. You know what? I think I'm going to route it a little lower. Okay. All right, shove that down out of the way. Now let's try it. All right, a little bit of choke. Maybe a little bit more choke. There we go. Oil pressure. All right, sweet. We'll let this warm up, and then I'm gonna pull it out of the way. Actually, you know what? I wanna see if it'll start right back up. Well, sweet. So I don't know quite how that wire got disconnected. I drove this here. I'm wondering, I don't know, this wire kind of jumps into a wad of electrical tape there, but it's near this oil pressure. So this oil pressure was off. That was just dangling. And so I wonder if something maybe grabbed and kind of tugged at both of those wires somehow. Like maybe the machine fairy came in one night and just tugged on those. I really have no idea. But I am good with it. Try and tuck that in there some more. Let's put this oil sensor light wire back on. All right, let's see if it'll fire right back up. Awesome. All right, now we'll let it warm up. Then we can move it. So I found a couple of the leaks. One of them is right here. It leaks out of this quick connect for the bucket. So what you can do here is you can pull this here and it will allow you to pull out that quick connect. You see all that oil? It's coming out now. It shouldn't be coming out. So there's an O-ring or a seal in there that needs to be replaced. Stick it back in there, you push it in and you lock it like that. So I'm gonna see about possibly a rebuild kit for these four, just because the seals are probably all old. So that's kind of like the leak here. That's actually a pretty big one. It drips quite a bit right there. Another pretty big one that I just found was kind of on that oil tank. Right here, it's dripping, leaking right out of this tube. It's either cracked, split, something. But when it's running, it leaks straight down there and then just runs straight down the tank, just all of that. Now, the other problem is, even when it's running, the oil level is ridiculously high. It also looks rusty. So, I'm not sure what's getting in there. It doesn't smell like fuel. It very well could be fuel. If this fuel pump, if the diaphragm is bad, it will just keep pumping fuel into the crankcase. So, because basically what it does is the diaphragm goes up and down, kind of back and forth like that, pulling fuel from the tank and then sending it over to the carburetor. So if that diaphragm goes bad, there's a shaft that goes in there and runs on the, I think it's the crank. I think it's the crankshaft, maybe the camshaft. I'm not sure. Actually, I think it is the camshaft. either way, no matter which one it runs on, if that diaphragm goes bad, fuel will leak past diaphragm and go into the crankcase, diluting the oil. So I am debating on pulling that and taking a look at it. It doesn't look like I can open it, but we could see if there's fuel on the end of it. It's literally a couple connections and 2 bolts and that thing will come out. We're gonna do all that later. For now, let's start by, I'm gonna use an air gun, blow as much of the junk and crap out as I can, and then we will start pressure washing. Don't knock over that 2x4 and then everything will be okay. All right, well, we got it pressure washed. So now let's do another walk around and just kind of see things I've discovered. It's been painted. We took off a lot of that paint, so it looks a little bit more rough in the sense of, you know, the paint doesn't look as good as it did, but we did uncover the 47 number for the loader. It does say John Deere under there, which we couldn't see that before. So that's awesome. We figured out that this is a John Deere M51TR engine with a 043825T is the serial on that motor. Over here, I believe that says 15R1C for the type, and the serial number is 034524T. So that's a little more information about this machine. The one thing I did check, so this is the dipstick for the hydraulic, the Hytrans, the hydraulic transmission fluid, and it's not on the stick at all. Like, there's nothing on it. And I got to thinking, because when you pull the dipstick here, we are way over full. So we're even more full than we were yesterday when I pressure washed it. We're up here, and the high and the operating range is way down there. So, and it is not leaking all of that on the ground. I mean, it's had some drips, but nothing to that degree. I thought this little fuel pump here had a bad diaphragm pumping fuel into the crankcase because, I mean, I didn't really think there was any other way of fluid getting in there. But now that I did a little bit of research last night, right back in there, there's a power steering pump that has a seal. If it goes bad, the power steering, which is essentially the same hydraulic fluid, gets pumped into the crankcase. And so that is absolutely going to be one of the first things that we fix, because I want to get that fixed. That will cause all kinds of issues if I just leave it. So we're going to start with that. But let's just keep walking around. So this is the same hydraulic transmission fluid, and this cooler is a transmission oil cooler, not an engine oil cooler. So one of the major leaks on this whole front area was right here. This tube is, I mean, I can even see that the clamp is loose. So I think that there's enough that I can pull it a little tighter, chop it, and clamp it there, at least temporarily. We're going to go through, I'm still not sure what this line, this plastic line goes to, but when we dive into getting the radiator out and everything, we should get a better idea of where it goes, because I really, really don't like plastic lines. I'd like to replace that with a copper one. There's a lot of kind of iffy wiring, but it all still really works well. So I'm not going to mess with much of that. The other major leaks at this back area are basically around these remote hydraulic connectors. So on the back side of them, they are dripping out of the back, and sometimes they'll drip out of the front. Like that one is starting to drip out of the front. So is that one. But I'm going to get a rebuild kit for each of these so that we can redo all the seals and the oil and the O-rings in them to make it so that this back isn't constantly getting covered in oil. I plan on pulling off this cover and just banging it straight, kind of straightening it out. The other thing I want to do is, you see all these hydraulic lines? It's kind of a trip hazard, because you have to kind of step over it to get in if you're getting in from this side. And so what I think I'm going to do, I think I can disconnect them and basically take the hydraulic lines underneath and maybe pop up right here and come up and over. And then I want to make a metal cover for them so that it protects those lines while they're underneath. I understand why whoever put this in did it here, because it is more protected there. But if we can make it cover either that goes right on top over here, which I'm kind of not the fan of because it, again, adds a trip hazard. But if we put it below, it kind of keeps everything flush, if we're able to. We'll dig into that later. That's not priority by any means at all. But there's other things like these seat spring bushings. You see that? It's completely gone. The top one is not completely gone, but it's getting there. Stuff like that isn't as important. It's missing one of these square blocks that limit how high this thing wiggles, because this side has them. Simple, not a big deal. There's, wire nuts, house wire nuts, and crimp connectors on wires and things like that I'm not the biggest fan of, but depending on time, we'll see where we go. On this side here, this is the diff lock. So that essentially will lock the two rear wheels together to get more traction. And so when you're driving and you want to lock both wheels, you basically just push this sideways. And then this here is our PTO engagement lever. So I can't do it now because it's not probably hitting a tooth or something, but when it's in this direction, it's off. Over here is on. The other thing I found is that this exhaust is missing the donut for actually clamping, so we're going to try and find one of those. Some of it cleaned up really well in the sense that it got everything off, but it definitely chipped a lot of paint. You can tell a lot of the inside stuff used to be yellow at one point. That air cleaner used to be yellow for sure. I'm not too worried about trying to touch all that up. We are going to get a new air filter for it. And there are lots of hydraulic lines that have, cracking here, there's cracking in there. These are cracking. That one's starting to show its age, and there's a few more on the other side. We talked about doing all of them, and at some point we will, but for right this minute, we're going to leave them alone. The other thing that I found is the bucket right here in this corner is completely rotten, and you can literally stick your finger all the way in and through it. And so this whole edge, you can see rot all the way through there. And so the plan eventually will be to have to cut that bottom corner out and throw some new metal in it. That is a bigger project than I want to mess with at this moment, but it is something that we're going to have to deal with. All in all, though, like, I laid down these pig mats down here, and there is not a drop of oil on any of them. In this area, it's still a little bit wet, and I wasn't able to get perfectly clean on this bottom area, but it really does help to kind of show what kind of hydraulic leaks we might have, because we had oil dripping all over the bottom of this out of, you know, that little hole there. And now that it's clean, I think it's just residue built up from other things. Although that, can't quite tell if that's something. But we're going to focus on the two major leaks, the one at the back on the two remotes for the hydraulics, and the one for the power steering up there. And then the other major leak that you can't see, which is the power steering pump leaking internally, putting additional hydraulic fluid into the crankcase of the engine, which is absolutely not good. So let's jump into doing that. We got to take the radiator out, possibly get the fan off. I'm not sure how far we'll have to go. I was absolutely planning on actually flushing the coolant system, so this gives us the opportunity. We'll at least drain it. I'll probably fill it back up with water. We'll let it run for a while. Once we get to that point, we'll flush it, and then we'll put some clean coolant in it. All in all, though, this machine is really nice, really good shape for its age. This bad boy was built in 1967, and man, it does look its age, but it works amazingly well. I'm happy that he was able to get this tractor. So let's keep going with it and make it as good as we can so he can enjoy it on his property. All right, here's our drain for the coolant for the radiator. I ran a tube down through a hole, and I've got a piece of tubing right here. So, see if I can route that better to get it to drain straight down. You know what? I'll just move it here. Oh, hi, Maisie. Hi, Maisie. Maisie's inspecting, making sure that we've done everything right. So I should be able to just twist this. And then there's a couple bolts on the bottom of this radiator, and it should just lift straight out after we get the upper and lower radiator hoses disconnected. All right, I think I got everything loose for the radiator. It should come out. All right, there's our pump. So it's right there. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. It looks like it hold it on. And then I see 1, 2 lines, hard lines. So we need to loosen those hard lines, get those off, and then get those 5 bolts off. We should be able to pull this whole block off. All right, let's get this pump out. Yeah, I got all the bolts loose. I think it probably should just come off. Unless that bolt holds it somehow. I don't feel any other bolts. So there's a short one here, and the other 3 are long. So just so we know that. So right here on this other side, there are 2 torque-headed nuts, or torque-headed bolts right there that are holding that flange. So I'm going to get those off, and the whole pump should come off. There's one part of it. I think our seal is going to be further in. There we go. Got it. All right, so here's our pump. So it came apart in pieces, which is fine. But this here is the shaft that actually engages with, I think it's the camshaft. Maybe it's the end of the crankshaft. I think it's the camshaft. I can't tell. I'm not exactly sure. One of the two. But this is the seal right here. And it came out just like this. Initially, I thought that it wasn't installed right because I basically was thinking that the engine oil pressure, but I was thinking wrong. So this the lip should face the pressure. And it just popped out. It really feels like they retrofitted or found one that it fit the diameter and the inner diameter for the shaft, but it was just too thick. Some guys were saying online that there's enough space to do 2 seals. I don't really know how that's possible, unless, I don't know. I think that 1 seal, the right seal, would be just completely flush there, unlike this one. Now, maybe this was installed incorrectly, because if you look, see the paint line? On this end, it's pretty even, but then see how it tapers up right there? So this was definitely not installed straight, and you can just tell that by the paint line there. So it was kind of at an angle, I would assume. And the seal itself doesn't look like it's in ridiculous condition. There's a little nick in there right here, but I don't know. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take this. I'm going to try and find one locally at the parts store, and we'll take the shaft. The shaft actually looks pretty good too. There's a little bit of something that I can feel, so I might buff this just on the sealing surface here, right near this oil hole, and then should be all right. But if I have to, we'll order one online, but I want to see if I can find one at Napa or something like that. So that is what we were after. And the gasket looks okay, but I may end up making a new one for it. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. Let's fix this main power steering link. And see this? See how loose it is? It was never making full contact, and it was never fully tight. So I think we're gonna pull it off and trim the hose back and try again. So pull that off. I think we're gonna cut it like right here. And we're gonna double up on the clamps here. Not even sure what this is. It feels like air brake hose for semi trucks. Hey, buddy. Hi. Huh? All right, hopefully that holds. The 2 hose clamps, I got about a 3/4 of an inch onto that barb. I had to cut back some of the sheathing to get a bite on it, but we'll see if that works out. This hose clamp on this one here is not getting any tighter, so I'm gonna change it to a smaller style. All right, let's get this cover off here. Got it. All right, well, I got that all straightened and back on. Didn't show any of the straightening because, well, we had a baby crying in here, and then, yeah, there he is. You can hear him back there. But so that looks much nicer, much straighter. A little bit of similar curves. I could do a lot more, but it's straight. It's not kind of on the actual PTO, and it's not going to be in the way. And it's covered, so nobody will accidentally hurt themselves there. Note to a friend who owns tractor, not a step. All right, so here's our steering pump, and I've got it all put together. I've gone through it, cleaned it all out. It looks like it's in great condition. Now, this is the shaft that the seal actually rides on. So this is the seal that, if it's not installed right, the hydraulic fluid will pass through this into the crankcase, because this gear is in the crankcase. And so this particular one, if you see the paint lines, it was installed at an angle. Like it's real, not much paint came off here, but a whole bunch came off here. And so this is also a 1/2 inch thick. It shouldn't be this thick. The right seal, which is a basically 8707, and it's a 1/4 inch thick versus a 1/2 inch thick. So the lip always faces the pressure. So the pressure that we're trying to keep in is the hydraulic pressure, so the lip faces in. So we'll press that in there. Fits beautifully on here, and it's got a spring retainer that helps keep oil in. They make them with a spring and without a spring, but the ones that have the spring in there are superior. They last longer. It keeps a little bit of pressure around the actual shaft. The shaft itself, I did kind of run some real high grit, like 1,000 grit, just kind of on here to knock down any high spots, but it's in really good shape. Doesn't need to be bushed or anything. But all in all, good to see that this thing is so clean, because this part is pretty much unobtainium. They only made machines like this for the first half of the production, and this machine was built from 1967, or no, 65 to 71, I think. Something around that area, and this one's a 67. So it's gonna get this put in. Before we go putting that in, let's make a new gasket for it. There's a little bit of an area right here I gotta cut off. And then we'll do all the holes. You know what? Let's do the holes now. Well, actually, no, let's not. Two, three, four, five, six, seven. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the two dowels. All right, there's our gasket. All right, I tore it apart. This is how it looks. That's your one face. This is basically the outside. And then we've got these two gears. One goes there. One sits here. And I don't understand what the purpose of this middle piece is, but maybe you do. But there's no seal between this block, this centerpiece, and this inside piece. It's got like this groove. Is there supposed to be an O-ring in there? Sure doesn't look like it. I think that's just an oil groove. But it definitely didn't have one before, and it wasn't leaking right here, so I'm really not too worried about it. So this piece goes like that, and then these two dowels line up here and here. Okay, so this shaft actually has a key in it. But let's get this oil seal put in. All right, like I said, the lip faces the pressure, so it faces down. Let's try and get this in there square. And actually, what I think I am going to do, I'm going to stick this through. That is much tighter than it was before. Well, I just ripped the seal. So, now, wasn't planned, but I did buy two. Not for this reason. Ugh, alright. Now I think I know why they did this, because then this pieces, you can put it through, put the keyway in, and then put it together. Alright, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to put this seal onto the shaft, and then we're going to install it with this. So, if I pound that straight down, should be able to get it to seat. There we go. Alright, here's our little key. Let's put that in the shaft. Take this. Okay, now the gear is locked on the shaft. Alright, here's our gasket. Let's put this on here. Got the old gasket removed on the tractor, and I cleaned the surfaces really well. We should be good to go. Got the radiator back in. So get these hoses hooked up, get everything bolted back together. We are looking good. So, yeah, next step, probably getting it started and flushing the coolant tank, getting all the water, and then we'll do oils, and hopefully we have no more leak. Well, I definitely do it right because I do it twice. Forgot to put the fan in, put the radiator in, got it all bolted up, and then I realized no fan. So yay! Well, tell me the shroud went in first. It did. I do it right because I do it thrice. Well, it was a lot easier to put that radiator in without that stuff. I wondered why it was so simple. Now we know. All right, check it out. All right, I got the whole radiator put back in, the front of the motor's all reassembled, so it's looking awesome. So, I still don't know what this line is. If you could tell me what this plastic line is, that would be awesome. It goes from this like overflow tank right down to the bottom of like this pump. I don't know if it's just like a vent line, but what I'd really like to know is if it breaks, is it going to cause a massive oil leak? And because I don't know that right now, I'm going to leave it alone. It doesn't look like it's in bad shape, but I mean, it's a plastic nut, it's a plastic line. Never been a big fan of those. So, love to know your thoughts in the comments if you know anything about these John Deere 2020s or this era tractor. But I've done a handful of other things. So, I straightened up this battery cover. It wasn't opening or wouldn't want to stay on. So now it does. I replaced the battery cables. So this was a red cable, and now it's black. And the one going from the battery here down to the starter was a black cable. And so just for ease of, not getting it wrong, I replaced that with a red one. So that's awesome. Got that done. What else did I do? Let's see. This pin here was bent. So I heated that up, straightened it out, got it so that it, is the way it should be. And on the back, I did a little bit of restoration work, i.e. some spray paint. My thought was this whole area was pretty much bare metal, so rather than, completely leaving it that way, I cleaned it off and just hit it with a coat of green. Haven't fixed the hydraulic leak back here yet. You can see it's still dripping. But I'm waiting on the kits to come in for those. Another thing I did is I moved this sign from here to behind the seat, which actually allows a lot better visibility when you're up on the tractor. That sign was also blocking this hazard light, so even if you wanted to use this hazard light, you couldn't do it because it was being blocked by this slow-moving emblem here, which I think it looks better there, a little bit more centered, better off. I also bent and straightened this cover. So this cover has kind of like caved in, kind of like down like this. And so that's straight, can actually kind of protect that area a little bit better. Over here, I dug through my exhaust donuts and I found one and got the exhaust really sturdy. I'm trying to shake it, solid. So that is absolutely great. This was just kind of flapping in the wind. Nothing was in there at all. It had disintegrated. So that's good. Got that figured out. So yeah, I did those things. The other thing I kind of did was I was able to clean off this John Deere just enough to be able to see it. It's painted on the paint that was underneath after we pressure washed it. So it does say John Deere, but at some point this tractor probably needs a repaint. But it says John Deere there and John Deere there. The other thing, I painted the rims, all except for that one. We're going to do that one here shortly, but that one, the yellow, same with that one, and then the rear. It is pretty amazing how you can add some paint to something and it just adds so much. It didn't do a great job, basically cleaned it. I didn't do the insides of the rims, but that other rim over there used to look like this. So, got the valve stem taped off, and we'll hit that with some paint soon. But I think next up, what I want to do, I was going to put coolant in the radiator and then get it started and warmed up, but right now we are over full on the engine by a lot. And so what I think I'm going to do is we're going to open the drain hole. We're going to drain out some of the oil. Then we're going to start it, run it, get it warm a little bit, and then change the oil.
All right, this thing takes like a T70 torque bit. Maybe. No.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah, that's not right.
All right, I was able to get a hex bit kind of pounded in there.
Nothing. Great. I think it's vice grip time, and it looks like somebody's already been on there with vice grips. Wonderful. But it is wallowed out like crazy in there.
All right.
Success. There we go.
I'm gonna have to weld a bolt or something in there to be able to give something for the future oil changes to use. Forgot to pull the drain plug, a little air vent plug, so it wasn't draining into the pan real quick, but let's see what that puts us in regard to the dipstick. Still a little bit over. Let's take some more out. Right down there in the middle of that area. Good enough for now. Let's get some water in this thing. All right, we're gonna flush the radiator with this stuff here. So now we'll add water till it's full. So here's our old filter. It is looking a little bit worse for wear. So got a brand new Wix. This is a 42222 new washer. So let's get this installed real quick. All right, brand new battery. So let's get this plopped in here. Here we go. So if you haven't seen one of these, this is a battery terminal spreader. So what you do is you put it in the end of the battery cable, and then you squeeze and it will open up those jaws. wider so that you can get it all the way onto the battery terminal. Like so. So now that one fits better, we can get it tightened down. I'll get the ground clamp on and we'll get it started.
A little bit of choke.
I shut the fuel off.
All right, let's take it out for a drive. Before we go any further, let's add a little high guard in this. Basically, transmission slash hydraulic oil. Not even on the stick yet. All right, I added most of that bucket.
And we're right about there. So the high mark is there, low mark is here. So we're in the range.
We're gonna leave it for now.
All right, so I just pulled the dipstick and we are all ready. So I had it literally at the low mark. We're now at the top on the engine oil. And over here, I had this thing right about there. And now we're down below the bottom line. So the only thing I can think is that seal didn't work. And I don't know why. Either it pushed it out or it blew it out. Well, that's not good. We need to clip this back on. But I don't know. Gosh. So I need to get this thing up to temperature. I don't think that the water temp gauge works. So I've got the thermal camera. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to drive it around some more. I know that the leak is still happening. If you guys have any ideas on what else could be causing hydraulic oil to get into the crankcase, let me know. Is there anything in like the steering column in regards to that could be leaking? I don't see anything on the ground. There's a little bit below the engine oil drip, the oil drain pan plug, because I don't have it all the way tight. But frustrating. Let's take it back outside and warm it up some more.
I hate getting paint on tires and things, but for this quick job, I didn't want to tape it off because it takes forever. So you take acetone on a rag and you run it along the tire, and you can get the paint off so it doesn't look like a bad job. Even though it is kind of a hack job to just do it like this with the paint and the rims, but it'll make it last longer, it'll look nicer for now. Eventually, maybe when we paint this tractor, we'll go the route of actually doing a good job on it rather than a quick job. And not that you couldn't do this later, but I usually try and do it while the paint's still a little bit wet. Just easier to do it now. Got the coolant draining, getting all that flush out of there.
All right, I think I figured out what's going on with that steering pump. Essentially, the two rings on the inside that I said looked like something should go there, but wasn't. I'm pretty sure those are seals that seal between the high pressure side of it, which is over here, and the low pressure side of it, which is where that seal that we replaced should have, that round one. So I'll show you that once I get the parts. I'm not going to tear that apart now. For right now, what I want to do is, see these hydraulic lines? They are just run right across the top, and I had all four of them up there. I tested with these two because they're the shorter of the two. The thought is that I run them underneath so that they don't cause a trip hazard. Well, that in itself creates a new problem. The new problem is that now the hydraulic lines are down here and could get caught on something if you're driving, you know, through the brush or weeds or whatever. So what I think I'm going to do is we're going to take and we're going to make a little shield that covers the bottom, and then the lines can go up under here and make a nice easy path through here to be able to safely get on and off the tractor and not have these hydraulic lines be stepped on every time you're, you know, coming into the tractor this way. So let's get these ones underneath, and then we'll start fabricating something. My plan is to make like a C-channel kind of thing, and then just bolt it through one of these holes here in the tread, and just enough that it is able to hold it on and protect the lines, but also something that, you know, is easily removable in case of needing to disconnect the lines or something blows or whatever reason is. So I don't have the right size C-channel, but I do have some angle iron. And my thought is that I weld these together and make a piece of C-channel. And then I think in the middle of here, I might take, I've got some scrap plate here that's just cut-offs from something. Take a piece and just weld it inside once I know where the bolts are going to go to give it a little bit more strength. So then on the top, over kind of where the foot is, I'm going to add another piece to kind of cover the area so that your foot right by the brake pedal doesn't get caught on those lines as well. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to tack this together and just see what it looks like up under there, and we'll go from there. All right, here's the underneath area. So the lines originally went right over the top there. I'm thinking, I've only got 2 of them down here now, but I want to run a channel right in that area. All right, so then this essentially will go right about there, about like that, and then we'll bolt it through the bottom there. So let's go drill a couple holes, and then we're going to make a plate for the top. All right, there's what it looks like without the hoses on the step. So that's nice. Kind of the 4 of them bundled up there. All right, so we're going to be putting a bolt in this hole, and that hole. And then I drilled out, so it used to look like that, like kind of a small hole. I drilled out that hole and that one there. So we're going to put 5 bolts holding it there. And then it's going to come here. I'm going to make a little bit of a plate cover to kind of get this corner. And then I might try and do some sort of a small plate that bolts in this area, mainly because then it would add some additional strength. But I'm not exactly sure if that's going to happen or not. Yeah, that's gonna protect it really nice. 2 more bolts here. And then I think right in this region, I'm gonna try and stick some rubber so that we can avoid rubbing through the line. I think I could get some horse stall mat or something in there. But yeah, it's looking good. All right, here's what it looks like from the top. So I made this, and this will slide in right there, and we'll weld it. And then that kind of gives like your foot a spot to kind of have a little bit more of a step, but also basically be able to protect the hoses a little bit further. So we have a wider distance, getting it a little way further away from the tire here. So I'm going to tack this in, and then we'll pull the whole thing off and weld it up. There's our guard skid plate. And here's what the bottom looks like. So the only holes are for the bolts, so nothing can get stuck through those square slots. And that like 3/8 plate will be a heck of a
skid guard for all the stuff that may rub it. Now, I've got some chunks of rubber and some hydraulic like hose covering to try and protect the lines. We're going to figure out where our rubs are. So let's go ahead and get this installed and we'll go from there. Kind of see what we need to do.
Well, it's been a minute since I've been working on this John Deere because, well, I'm pretty sure that the pump needs these two little O-rings, or these seals. There are two grooves in that pump that these would fit in. Well, when we took it apart, there was nothing in there. And so obviously I thought that it was correct, and I thought wrong. So I got these from John Deere, and come to find out, this blue seal is a John Deere part. Because if you look here, these are identical, and I went ahead and bought two of them. So, what I think happened, I don't think that this was in incorrectly. I think that they forgot to put these seals in, and when that happens, it puts the full pressure against this oil seal. This oil seal is only supposed to handle the oil that could basically drain back after the machine is done running or something to that effect. We're gonna jump on getting that in. I also got two overhaul kits, and I'm not sure which one I need for the rear auxiliary hydraulic hookups for the bucket. So we're gonna get those installed. We got a wheel spinner, got a couple other parts, pieces. We've got all the oils. We've got new coolant. So I'm going to jump right on getting that torn apart, and we'll go from there. Well, the seal itself is not blown out. There's definitely oil leaking around that seal. Let's open it up. So right there's a groove that one of those O-rings should be in. There's the other groove. So let's get this cleaned up, and we'll lay these rings in it. This is a pain to get straight. This seal is evil. It does not want to stay. Thinking maybe I get some RTV. I think what we're going to do, we're going to take a little dollop of RTV and just put it in that groove. See if this helps. Big time. Yeah, without this RTV, I don't know how the heck you would install this and ensure it goes where it needs to be.
All right, let's just hope and pray those O-rings seated where they need to be. The shaft is definitely keyed correctly because I can hear it kind of pumping. So let's get this put back on. And here's how you can see that blue section, that's that 1/2-inch seal sticking up past. Hopefully, cross our fingers, the 2 round O-ring or quad seals or whatever the heck you call them are situated in there the right spots. Really hard to know. I think it'll be fine. Thought that last time too.
All right, I got it all buttoned back together. Got water in the radiator, and I drained the oil down to the full mark. So we are literally sitting right slightly at, yeah, now we're exactly at full. So right at full mark on the oil. And this is how much oil came out of it. So this is how much, just running it a very short time, went from the transmission to the crankcase. So, assuming those seals are the problem, when we run this, we shouldn't have any problems with the oil going into the crankcase. Let's find out. I gotta use my step for the first time. Check that out. Climb right up. So this is what I do whenever I drain something and I leave it for a while. I leave little notes like that, no coolant. Not the case now. Stick that battery back on. Okay, so start this baby up, give it a little choke, little crank. Yeah. Leave that choke a little longer. I looked under there and we got a pretty major oil leak. Where is it coming from? It's wet right there. Oh boy. Well, I got this pump out again, and here's these 2 basically sealing rings. They imploded. All of the RTV I used kind of got everywhere. It did not seal. So I've done a few things. Come on. First off, I made a seal, basically a gasket, for both sides of this internal ring. So basically, it never had one. The parts does not show one, but I'm going to try it. What's supposed to happen is you're supposed to have that ring is supposed to fit here. But what I don't understand is there's a gap there. And on the parts breakdowns, it doesn't show a gap there. It shows a notch just like this, not like a big one there. So when I took this apart, one of these, basically it was bunched up right there and had pushed out. It really wasn't good. So, and this RTV kind of got all over the pump. So I completely disassembled. This has nothing in it. Completely cleaned out all of the ports, got all the little chunks out. Haven't seen any issues on the internal side of things, but I don't have new rings. But what I think might have happened is maybe these grooves were a little deeper initially, and over the years somebody faced it off with a mill just to make it flat and true so that it would match up and meet up with this and the other side of it. And maybe they did that a couple times over the decades that this machine's been in service, and it just kind of eliminated the groove for this to fit into. So I don't know. One thought that I'm going to put it all together with just these gaskets in there, and we'll see what happens. The other thought is what I could probably do, and take some figuring out, basically deepen this groove so I can either, one, get a new square seal like this so that it'll fit in there, or 2, find an O-ring that would fit better and recess it down enough that it will basically squeeze against this here and this cover here. So the other thing I did on the actual cover is I basically center punched all the way around this seal. I did 4 big ones, 1 on each corner and the top and bottom, and then I did little ones all the way around. And that's basically to try and give the case something to really bite into. The seal fits really, really well there, but you know, I really do think that the internal pressure is what keeps pushing this seal out. It shouldn't have that much pressure on that oil seal. So let's throw this back together one more time, and I'll see if I can get it working then. I got updates. We are pulling the steering pump for the 20th time. I sealed it against the engine, but then it didn't have any power steering. So I made 2 gaskets to go on the inside. Well, I figured out by taking both gaskets out and putting it all back together that the thickness of this times 2 in that pump made it so it did not create enough pressure to actually turn the steering. So I put it all back together with no gaskets, and it worked. And then I decided, okay, well, maybe I'll try 1 gasket. So there's 1 gasket in there. And not enough. Like, it does not create enough pressure. Just tried it. No power steering. So we're pulling the pump one more time. We're going to take both gaskets out, and then we're going to silicone it. I am over it. This has been a battle trying to figure out this thing. I'm just going to put silicone where that O-ring should have been, and then we'll get it setting up for tonight. I know how to take this area of the engine apart way better than I ever wanted to. But as Josh knows, we do it right because we do it 20 times. All right, here's our RTV. Just trying to wipe it from the inside so any of the extra doesn't end up messing with the gears. I already got the other side done. Now we'll put the pump back together. Cleaned all these really well. I know there's a chance of little pieces of that getting into the pump or whatever, but I'm at the point now where I'm willing to deal with it, and I put a thin layer on, and it should just do its job and seal up. And I've heard of some pretty big chunks going through this hydraulic system on these machines of metal, and so if metal can go through it, I bet it'll chew up any RTV. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and install this because there's a bunch of other bolts that would help hold it tight while it's setting up. All right, well, I think we finally got that power steering pump whipped. And when I pull the dipstick here, I made a mark. That little white mark is where the oil level was. Right now, we are just below it. So the oil level is right about where my fingernail is there. So a little lower than the line, but having run it, it filled all the cavities in the engine and all the oil passages and ports, and so it's still draining back to the pan. But the big thing is it's not above the line, so we're not leaking oil from that pump into the engine now, which is absolutely awesome and really what I've been struggling with for quite some time. And amongst that progress, we also did a couple other things, like, for instance, see this bolt here? That bolt was broken. There was no bolt there, just the broken part. We got that removed. This one and this one were also loose, so that loader frame was definitely not in great shape in regards to longevity. So we got those tightened up, and here's what it looks like with the step. Absolutely great. I love the access, being able to get through there. The next thing we're going to do is fix or figure out what's going on with the seals on these rear remotes. So essentially these are what allow hydraulic pressure to go up to the loader. So what we're going to start with, we're going to throw a flush in the radiator. We're going to run it a bit more, get it a bit more hot. And then we're going to take it in, change the oil, get a new filter on it, drain the coolant out, put actual antifreeze in it because I've only got water in it at this time. And then we'll jump on trying to fix these rear remotes. I've got a bunch of small little details to do to the tractor. We'll put everything back together and take it to its new home. There's our radiator flush. Pretty topped up on water now. Let's give it a start and we will let it run for a few minutes. I don't think the water temp gauge works. Put your clutch in, clutch in, clutch in. Every time you go to stop or slow down, you put the clutch in because you're basically disengaging the transmission. We're amazing. More gas! Faster! Got Maisie out here with us. She's just chilling. Yeah, she's a great dog. Come on. Come on, girl. Josh running the John Deere 2020. It's literally his first time ever. Probably ever being on a tractor by himself. And he has a grin ear to ear. He loves it. Maybe I'll pass the bug on to him. We'll just have to wait and see. Ooh, golf ball. Sweet. That's power steering for you. Mixed. Now easy is the turn. I think he thinks Andrew's tractor is sexy. I'd say that's a win-one for tractors. Telling you kids, running machines is awesome. What do you think? How's your first tractor driving experience?
It's a little hard to like learning the gear, but besides that,
When you're driving, you mean?
yeah. Besides that,
Drive it a couple more times, just take it back and dump the oil and fuel.
that was fun.
What was it?
Yeah.
I figured you'd like it. Getting the coolant drained. Got a tube on the drain valve there. Radiator cap is off. Oh, it's smoking. Smoking. So that's guten hot. And that means it is good and hot for those that need translation. It is a German phrase. So get that draining. I'm going to pull the drain plug on the oil pan, and we're going to get some new oil in this thing, get the old stuff out. Actually, while I think about that, let's check the oil. All right, are we way over full? No, let me grab a rag. I think I got one. Saved one. Anybody need to pee? We ran that thing for probably 45 minutes with that radiator flush in. Let's see what we've got for oil. Looks like our paint mark moved off or got, but we are right there. So we are not overfilling. Sweet. Good deal. So we finally got that power steering pump whipped. So yeah, awesome. So I'm going to keep checking the oil for a couple minutes and make sure it's about where it should be, and then we'll get that dropped. All right, I'm going to pull this drain plug. So I just had it semi-tight. We're going to have to take this drain plug and weld like a bolt or something in it because it's so stripped out that the vice grips is the only way to get it off. Try not to burn my hand here. Oy, oy, oy. Well, that got a little dicey. Almost was bad, but a little mess to clean up. But see here, like, it's like a Torx bit of some kind, but it's been mangled. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put like a bolt in there with a hex head on it, and I'm just going to weld it. Or maybe take like part of an Allen wrench. I don't know. We might have been cursed, because, I mean, that's a Fram, so not a great sign. Come on, baby. Come on now. Oh, yeah? You tired, Maisie? Good girl. Yeah. There we go. Pull that a little closer in case this... Yeah, it's still got oil in it. Not much though. See this? Mm-hmm. This is for draining an oil filter. So you put the filter right there and it keeps it up high enough that the oil can drain out of it and not like seal against the plastic. So just a little tidbit. And then to drain, which what I did was I drained this thing. It's filling up really quick. You have to open the vent. And I didn't have that open, so it started to almost overflow, but it caught up. Could have been bad, but bad just means more work. We're going with a much better wicks. So let's get that on there. We'll throw a little bit of oil on this rubber seal. There we go. Doesn't have to be crazy tight, fellas. Whatever you can do by hand. And now I will write the date and hours on it. I like to do that after I've installed it because a lot of times you never know what angle it's going to get seen at. So, not that it matters, because it doesn't. All right, so we're putting an oil treatment in it. Because this is an old engine, we want to get the zinc and other additives into it that
this engine needs. But these old engines need additional zinc and a couple other chemicals that modern oils and engines don't either provide in the oils, or the modern engines don't exactly need it. All right, I'm gonna get that filled up. We're getting there. We are almost there. All right, I got updates. So I would really like to get this hydraulic leak at the back fixed. So they've got two kits here. One's says overhaul kit. The other one says overhaul or breakaway overhaul seal kit new John Deere. I don't know which one I need, but these remotes leak. Now, I don't have time to get it done. He needs the tractor back. He's got some projects. I've had this longer. Trying to figure out that steering pump situation has been a heck of a lot more work than I initially had planned. So I'm going to basically just give him the kits, and when he has time to stop and actually take a look at it, then he can tear it down, or maybe I'll go over to his place and we'll take a look at it. But for now, we're going to leave that as is. I'm going to leave all my markers on here, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, all those zip ties. I'd like to tear into it, but we just don't have time. So a few more things we are going to do before it gets out of here, though, is a wheel spinner. We're going to add a 2-inch ball to the rear, to the drawbar. I've got a seal for the fuel tank. Basically, this goes into the hood and kind of seals fuel from dripping down past it. New cap for the steering wheel, power steering. Other thing that I put together was just a little tool kit for his son. He's running around with some tiny little wrenches last time I was over there, so I thought that could be kind of cool. So, yeah, painted it green, you know, just like Daddy's tractor. So hopefully he enjoys that. We'll give him that. Got some other parts here, like the additional oil seal. There's some other things that, you know, maybe he can get around to, but let's finish up these few things, and then we'll put it all back together. All right, right here, got a hole big enough for a ball. So we're putting a little 2-inch ball here. Maybe he can move some trailers around with the tractor or whatever, but perfect. All right, there's our power steering. So straight. All right, we got that beautiful power steering cap, so might as well add a John Deere wheel spinner. Beautiful. It's gonna look pretty nice. Yeah, it's gonna hang out right there. Sweet.
Before I cut the other one off, let's double check.
Yep, looks the same. Much tighter. There we go. There we go. That looks a lot better.
So there's our hood. Got those dents kind of banged out of it. Looking a lot nicer.
All right, let's get this side cover put back in there. So this spring hooks down below. It's hard to show you. All right, so there's one side cover kind of on. Let's put the hood on. Is there no fuel seal around the hood there?
Beautiful, finally. All right, there's our side cover on. Gas cap. And the radiator cap. Perfect. Looks like a John Deere tractor again. I guess it never really stopped looking like one, but it's a little bit better. All right, one more thing. Got our new decal. Like a glove. Pretty much look at that every time you run the tractor, so I figured that decal was important. And it came with the PTO decal, so let's stick that on. Right here, this is how you turn the PTO off. On is here, off is there. So it's got the little yellow arrow, that's to denote that it's on, so we're going to stick that right here. Call it right there. Sweet. I wouldn't have replaced that decal if I had had to buy it, but because it came with the shifting decal, I'm glad it's there.
Yeah, got loaded.
Now we know.
Hold it like this, and you just point it at him, okay? Like this is where you gotta point, like that. Can you do it?
Just head out with the gas, that's what fucked out of me. Here, point it at your dad. Ready? Like this, watch. That. You're gonna show him, see what your dad does. Like that. He's driving a tractor, isn't he? Follow him. Got it?
What do you mean hold it? Okay.
Stay by your dad, okay?
Well, we got it delivered to my friend's house. Now, I do not have the greatest news. What I came to find out was that we are still dumping hydraulic fluid into the crankcase. So we're way up here by my thumb up here. It should be way down there at the most. So I think that either one, that hydraulic shaft that goes and gears into the timing cover is worn to the point that it doesn't seal. The oil seal that rides on that shaft is no longer making tight enough contact to keep oil in this power steering pump. So I don't know. I am at my wit's end. It is absolutely low on hydraulic fluid. There's no external leak other than a tiny little drip kind of from these remotes because we didn't get those fixed. So if you have any ideas on what we could do to fix this, I would be ecstatic because I have been banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how to fix it. The hard part is that they only made this in the early 60s and for a few years, and then they switched to a different design with, I believe it's a different steering column, and then there's a couple other things that are different, but it's no longer in the timing cover, so there's no way for hydraulic oil to get into the engine crankcase. Other than that, this thing runs perfectly, absolutely beautifully. Everything works the way it should. So if you know, either if you have a power steering pump laying around or know where I can get one, that would be amazing. Or number two, if you have a tractor or parts for a tractor to convert this to the newer style power steering, that would be awesome. I've been looking. I don't know where to find one. This is a 1967 machine, and that's kind of the issue here is, you know, I'm sure a lot of people converted theirs a long time ago. I believe this was an issue when we got the tractor. When he bought the tractor, I believe it was an issue, and obviously it is what it is. So, and this just goes to show that it doesn't always work out how you want. You know, at the end of the day, I tried more things than I knew how. I gave it every effort I had to try and get this thing fixed and not putting hydraulic fluid in the crankcase, and I'm just at my wit's end here. So, all right, so we got the pump all laid out, and I actually thought that the bolt that we needed was one that screwed into the end of this. Well, it doesn't. It actually screws into the actual engine block. And so that's going to be absolutely fun, but this is the actual one. So if you see it, basically just like a flat face with, you know, a taper down to a threaded shaft. So my assumption is that they want that big head to spread out the weight on the gear in the timing cover there. So we spent the 70 or 80 bucks for the bolt. That's great and everything. Well, in doing some measuring in these bushings, what we're finding is there's a little bit too much slop. And so when you read the manual, the actual service manual, it basically says, if the bushings are bad, replace the cover as bushings are not serviceable. Well, I'm not going to be able to find the cover, so we're going to replace the bushings. So we bought some bushings. These are 1-inch OD 0.87 or something ID. When I stick it on the shaft here, there's almost no play. And so I definitely think that could be an issue with this pump not running right. Not to mention it's missing this, etc. So hopefully we got the right size. Let's press this one out and we'll find out, because I was measuring and I almost think that this bushing is not going to fit. Not exactly sure, but let's pop this out and we'll see if it'll work. All right, there we go. Here is that new bushing, and I'm wondering if it's going to fit. Let's just All right, yeah, that feels like it's going to have an interference fit. Let's measure it real quick. 1.002. Here's the old one. And that one is 1.002. 1.001. Yeah, so that's going to absolutely, the bigger is better. Now if we stick this on here, obviously there's no real play, but it does spin freely. And then the old one, you can just hear side to side play. So that's definitely worn out. So the plan is going to be to push these in there, but because they're too big, we're going to have to basically slightly cut them down on the lathe. Now getting these other ones out is going to be a little bit more difficult because they're blind holes. I know this cap comes out, I'm sure of it. I don't want to mess with taking it out, so we're going to take that one out blind. And then there's two here that we're going to take out blind. And there might be a lip. There's a little bit of a lip down there. I might be able to get a puller under to see what kind of pullers I have. But most likely I'm going to have to score the edge of it in a couple spots and kind of break it inwards and then pry it out. At least we know that this bushing is going to work. All right, so the plan here is going to be take this die grinder and make a groove that will weaken that bushing. Let's try it. I don't want to go all the way through because I don't want to hit the actual parent metal there. Okay, let's try this. There, just like that. There we go. There we go, just like that. So it basically broke right along one of those scores that I did and basically allowed it to crumble in. And by weakening it, made it so we didn't need a puller because we don't care about saving that. All right, I'm going to do the same thing on these two. And then we're going to head up to the other shop and get those bushings cut down to the right size. So what we need to do is we need to take these bushings, we need to make them look like this. I'm going to measure that. I'm pretty sure this is 3/4 of an inch, and this is 1 full inch. So we need to take 1/4 inch off. My only worry is I don't want to use this chuck. It works fine, but I don't want to make this out of round. So I've got a plan. Take this 3-jaw off. This is a Jacob's spindle chuck. And this is the only chuck that actually came with this lathe. And what it's designed to do, you pop that lock forward. Oh, that's wrong way. So this will unscrew. And you can take these little rubber collets and find the size that you need. So it goes, there's another set that's smaller than this. This kit, or this box here is 5/8 of an inch all the way up to 1 3/8. So I believe this is our 1 3/8. Yeah, 1 1/4 to 1 3/8. So let's see here. Too small, this one seems right. So this is 7/8 of an inch to 1 inch. And that fits there perfect. But we need to take off 1/4 of an inch, so we need it to stick out. So what they do is they have these. Let's see, is this? There's 7/8 of an inch. So this basically, you stick it in the back of it, and it keeps the little collar even all the way across, because our part does not go all the way through. It's only going to stick out, you know, like that much. and so, or it's only going to go that far in. So the plan will be to take this, shove it into the back. You put that right there. It's got a little taper. Put that back there. Go the other way with it, and it actually cinches down. So let's go ahead and get this on the machine. And then once you have it tight, you can use this kind of like a hammer to tighten it. And then when it's tight, you just basically go lock it in, and now this is ready to turn. I've got this height gauge set up to be perfectly at the height of that old bushing. So the height gauge, essentially I can use it as a scribe, and we're going to mark these at this height, and then we're going to part them off in the lathe. Like so. So we'll do that to all 4 of them. Got the parting tool in there already. We'll take this. Okay. There we have our bushing. So if we measure it, we're right at 0.7545. So that'll be fine. I'm going to do that 3 more times, and we'll get these put in. I did a little chamfer on the edge just to help it get started. It should be good to go. Let's start with this one here. And I'm sure I'm not doing this right because I'm hammering it, but it'll be fine. Beautiful. Perfectly flush. Kind of sits proud, just like the other one did. Looks good to me. Perfect.
Puts it in there. Nice.
Yeah, it does. Nice and easy. Comes perfectly flush. Really need to mount it. All right, there we go. Got those 2 in, these 2 in. Let's see how it fits. All right, it's time to finally, hopefully, reassemble this for the last time. So the plan, so this shaft, there is a tiny little groove here. I don't really think that that's the problem, but I really don't know for sure. So, one thing that I know is that a 1/4-inch seal or this 1/2-inch seal both fit into this spot here. And as you saw in the video before, I bought some 1/4-inch seals and they would have worked fine, but we were having other issues in other areas. And this is the original 1/2-inch seal that kind of was tapered at an angle. You can kind of see where the pressure pushed it out, or it didn't get seated in there right. I'm not exactly sure what happened. But hopefully and possibly having these bearings or these bushings here replaced and of the proper size will eliminate any oil bypassing the bushings here. But the other thought is, instead of going with the actual proper 1/2-inch, we're going to go with a smaller one, because then this rubber lip will ride on a different place on this shaft, which will hopefully make a difference in regards to its longevity and ability to stay sealed. It doesn't necessarily have to be this wide. I don't know. We have another 1/2 inch in case something happens, but for now we're going to go with this one. So you always want that inner lip facing pressure, because the pressure will come this way and then it expands out. Oh, that beautiful. Definitely feels tighter, but I can turn it by hand, which means that the engine's going to be able to turn it like no problem. And those bushings will wear in better to the shaft. Right about there is where it's going to ride. And actually, now that I look at it, you can kind of see, if we had had that 1/2-inch one, see right there, there's like a little wear line right there. So it's not where I actually thought it was, further in where the shaft was riding, or the seal. But it's right, it would have ridden right where that wear spot is.
This component?
Yeah, seriously. Of everything I've ever worked on, like, I've never had a situation where one part, especially something as insignificant as the power steering.
Yeah.
Now it moves fluid. That's all I wanted to see. Well, the pump is as good as it's ever going to get. Minus paint, and we've already decided it's not happening. A new seal and new bushings finally, and maybe that made the difference. Don't know. Guess we'll find out. Now we got to head back to the machine and get that little bolt is broken in the machine, because we can't see where the bolt threads in. So that's going to be fun. But at least this is as good as it's going to get. If you see right in here, it's kind of hard to show, but you see right there, that wore out thing? That is essentially a spacer that's supposed to keep the gear for the power steering pump from coming too far into the block. What it should look like brand new, it should look like this brand new. So essentially it's threaded into the block, and it's just a spacer to keep it away from the block so that it doesn't wear into it. And the problem I'm having is this one has no real way of getting on it to get it out of there. And so, like this one, this has a hex. So I'm going to try and figure out how to get it out of there, because I think that part of the issue is that that gear is coming too far close to the engine, causing the seals to wear out, because it's just moving back and forth within the pump, which also caused the bearings, the bushings that we replaced, to go bad. So we want to replace this bolt in there, and I got to figure out how to get it out.
All right, so my plan is to try and take a chisel, see if I can punch this sideways and get it to start loosening. There it goes. Got it. I did not think there was a chance in the world that was going to happen that easy. Oh man, I've actually been dreading doing this. I thought that right there, the little round circle, I thought that was the broken bolt. And really, until I got in here and I looked, I did not realize that it was just worn. So there it is. And now that I see it, it's not that worn out. It looks to me like the center of that was an Allen head at one time. And so that gear wearing into it wore into the Allen head, and it just looked like kind of like a keyway. I thought it was a keyway, but it's not. Totally pumped to have gotten that out.
You ever have those things where you just absolutely dread doing it, and just getting started is the hardest thing to do? Well, this was one of those things. I'd already done so much work trying to get this power steering pump fixed and figured out, and as you've seen, it was a mountain of work trying to figure it out, especially for someone that's never worked on one before. Yeah. I expected a couple seals, you know, maybe an O-ring or two, and boom, we'd have it done. But that pump has turned into be a major problem. And getting this little gear spacer out was what I thought was going to be drilling it out, using every extractor I had, breaking off a torque bit in a hole, and then having a hardened piece in the middle of it. You know, and it turned out to be, I hit this with the chisel once or twice, and boom, it twisted, and the whole thing came out. So I guess the hardest thing about some of these things is just getting started, right? Like getting started doing it is probably a majority of the battle. And I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I avoid those battles. But I am glad to have that done. We're going to pop the new one in. This one's not ridiculously worn. It does have some wear on it. This one's brand new. We have a brand new one. We might as well put it in. So we're going to put that in there. We're going to get the pump back in. So the other big thing, I don't know if I explained it well, on the pump is the bushings themselves were worn to the point that the shaft moved this way. So it allowed pressure to get by and then push those seals out. Plus, even with a good seal, the fluid could get past and end up dumping into the oil, which is not what we want. I think this is the last piece to the puzzle. We're going to put this one in. This one's a bit different. It actually has a hex head, so you can get an 1 1/8" socket on it. This one is just a round, and right there in the middle, I believe is what's left is an Allen head to be able to install it. And so some metal wore over the top of it. Whatever. Absolutely great to have it out. Absolutely great to have gotten started and figured it out. So let's get this popped in there, get that pump in for hopefully the last time, and put this thing back together. All right, got that new one in there. Let's see here. What the heck did I do with the dipstick? Ah, the dang dipstick. Did I take it over here? I did. So it should be between here and here, and we're way up at my thumb there. So that's really the main reason we've done so much dang work to this power steering pump, because it was dumping all that fluid into the engine. So let's dump that fluid one more time out of the engine. Got some new engine oil for it. We'll drop that in. And then one more thing I want to do is this little guard I made. I'm hoping we have enough line to be able to pull extra through, because we might have some issues with the arm being able to move up and down without it pinching here. So I got to check that before we go too far.
I drove this thing.
I know. All right, let's dump this oil. Actually, is 5 gallons going to be enough? Is this empty? Okay, good. We got 2 buckets. It looks really good. It's really clean, but it's all brand new. The oil and the hydraulic fluid. It's just in the wrong place. Now I'm kind of thinking I might take this fluid and go put this in one of my machines that runs and dumps oil out just to use it. Coming up on 5 gallons. See if we can make the switch without too much mess. It's starting to slow down, actually. We might fit it all in one bucket. All right, good deal. It'll be 5 gallons. All right, well, we got it all put back together. Let's see how this thing cold starts. Battery's hooked up. Literally, we've probably not started this in 3 months. So we'll give it a little choke. Like it started yesterday. Something didn't sound right. Let's try it again. Oh. The belt is on wrong. It did not get underneath that bottom pulley, so. All right, it's all back together. On to its maiden voyage. Come here, buddy. Here, come over here. Here, let's leave the shovel right here, all right? You watch that blade in the back. I'll watch this side. Let me just move the van. Come over here. Come here. You're good. All right, well, there you have it. The John Deere 2020 is finally back in operation. And we've been checking the oil multiple times, trying to see if we had any leaks into the engine, and we don't. The engine oil is staying exactly where it should be. So, finally, we figured out the old John Deere 2020. Come here, Maple. Come here, girl. This is Maple. She's a German short hair pointer. She is as crazy as they get. Super high energy dogs. Very similar to Weimaraners. So I hope you enjoyed the process of getting this old beast back up to snuff and ready for my buddy to use it for years to come. So, as always, thanks for watching. You guys have a great one, and I'll catch you on the next one here at Salvage Workshop.